Live from Singapore, this is BBC News. Syria's new leader says armed groups will be absorbed into the army as some communities express fear for their future. Tributes are being paid to 9-year-old Andrei Gleisner, one of 5 victims of a Christmas market attack in Germany. And in his first rally since winning the election, Donald Trump says he may demand the return of the Panama Canal to the US. A warm welcome to Newsday. I'm Suranjana Tewari. Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, has said all weapons in the country are to come under state control and that armed factions would soon begin to be dissolved and incorporated into the army. His Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, or HTS, was the key rebel group that overthrew President Bashar al-Assad. But it's an Islamist organization that was once associated with al-Qaeda, and that's causing concern for some minorities. Our correspondent Yogita Lamaye has visited communities in the town of Suwaida in Syria's south and in the capital Damascus and sent this report.
The dictator has fallen and fled, but what of the community he belonged to? Bashar al-Assad is from the Islamic Alawite sect. It's one of Syria's biggest minorities, but it's controlled power over a majority Sunni Muslim country for 50 years. In a working-class Alawite neighborhood of Damascus, a few agreed to speak to us. Dozens of others refused. I asked if they feared revenge.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has been respectful to us, but there are groups pretending to be HTS who are making threats. We are scared of them.
They're careful when they speak and are keen to distance themselves from the regime. But many from the Alawite sect, and indeed this neighborhood, were a part of Assad's brutal forces. Where are they? I asked.
Everyone who worked with the military and did bad things has fled. But people who do not have blood on their hands, they are not scared.
The rebels now in control have said they're not looking for revenge. A group with a jihadist past and an Islamist present. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has also promised that the freedoms of minorities will be protected. It's a crucial issue for Syria's plural society. This is the Christian quarter of Damascus. Now, we have seen Christmas decorations up in some parts of the city, but people who live here tell us the decorations here are more muted than they have been before. Christians have told us that they do feel reassured by HTS's promises, but that there is still uncertainty and there are still worries about the form of government that this country will have in the future. We met Yusuf Sabag, a lawyer from the Christian community.
I'm so happy because the Assad fall. This is like a dream come true. But there is concern. I have to be realistic. A lot of Syrians, Muslims and all other minorities don't wish that Syria will be a new Afghanistan. We don't want to live under something like Taliban.
70 miles from Damascus, we drove to the city of Suwaida, dominated by the Druze, another religious minority. At the city's central square, the Druze have gathered to watch their children perform, celebrating the fall of the regime.
We are celebrating now, but in the event that there is an extreme regime with extreme laws, we are prepared to stay in the square and demand our rights.
It's a moment of hope for Syria, but also one of uncertainty. Yogita Lamaye, BBC News, Suwaida.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, the Civil Defense Agency says an Israeli strike late on Sunday killed at least 5 people at a shelter for displaced people. They said drones targeted tents in a humanitarian area of Al-Mawasi in western Khan Yunis. Israel said the strike was aimed at Hamas operatives. The latest killings bring the total of number of deaths across Gaza on Sunday to more than 30. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will continue to act against the Houthis in Yemen whom he accuses of threatening world shipping and the international order. His statement comes a day after a missile fired from Yemen fell in the Tel Aviv area, causing a number of injuries. Gerald M. Firestein is director of the Arabian Peninsula Affairs Program at the Middle East Institute and a former U.S. ambassador to Yemen. I asked him about the dangers of another front opening up in the conflict as Israel and the Houthis exchange fire.
Well, of course, the Houthis, in some ways, are the last element, the last pillar of the axis of resistance that's still standing. They have been engaged in this series of attacks on shipping in the Red Sea since over a year now, as well as continuing efforts to actually strike at Israel itself. And so the issue has been the ability of the international community to deter further attacks that have had a huge impact on the global economy, shipping through the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and also, of course, Yemen, in the midst of a civil war, is also vulnerable to this continuation of Israeli attacks, as well as U.S. and U.K. Efforts to stop the Houthis. So one thing that you don't want to see, of course, is that this conflict is going to spread and make the situation in Yemen even more complicated than it already is.
Yeah, the Houthis are one of the members of the so-called Axis of Resistance that have not been hammered this year. How strong do you think their position is right now?
Well, they have definitely increased their capabilities over the course of the last 13 or 14 months. And they have successfully, of course, waged a conflict internally in Yemen since 2014. They have improved their capabilities. They've improved their military capacity over this period and have demonstrated an ability to really be very effective in striking at international shipping. And so they are absolutely a threat, not only to Yemenis, but also to the global economy.
You have held a number of positions in the Middle East. Turning to Syria, what's your read on HTS and how it's been operating so far?
Well, I think so far people are watching carefully. I know that here in the U.S., we've had some senior U.S. State Department officials who visited Damascus and then met with the senior leadership of the HTS. I think that it's probably too early to make an assessment, but there is some hope, at least, that they will move Syria in the right direction. Whether they are really invested in building a more democratic, more open society or not remains to be seen. And I hope that the international community will engage with this new leadership in Syria and help move them along that track. But as your own journalist reported, I think within Syria itself, people are watching carefully, waiting to see which way this new leadership moves and what direction they take.
On Gaza, a Palestinian official has told the BBC a ceasefire deal is 90% there. Do you expect it to come through before Trump takes office? And if not, what are the sticking points?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we've been 90% there for quite some time. This isn't the first time that people have been optimistic. It really is a question of the will of the two parties, of the Israelis and Hamas, whether they have come to the conclusion that it's better for them to make a deal or not. Donald Trump has made certain, threatening noises over, his desire to see this finished soon. But each of the sides is making their own calculations, what's in their best interest.
In other news, a 9-year-old boy who died in Friday's attack on a German Christmas market has been named. Andre Gleisner was killed along with 4 adults in the city of Magdeburg. The man suspected of carrying out the attack, Taleb al-Abdul Mohsin, who moved to Germany from Saudi Arabia 18 years ago, has been remanded in custody on charges including murder and attempted murder. Police say he had posted Islamophobic comments online. The German government says it will investigate whether more could have been done to prevent the tragedy. Anna Foster is in Magdeburg and sent this report.
This is Andre, 9 years old, looking forward to Christmas, enjoying a night out at the festive market when he was killed. A fundraising account for his devastated family has raised thousands of euros. On social media, his mum said, "Let my little teddy bear fly around the world once again." Taleb al-Abdul Mohsin has been charged with Andre's murder and that of 4 other people at the Christmas market. German investigators are building up a picture of the Saudi doctor, including in his own words.
My name is Taleb. I'm from Saudi Arabia. I'm an activist.
In 2019, he was interviewed by the BBC. He talked about how he used his free time to help people.
I created a website to help people seeking asylum, especially from Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region.
Now he's been charged with killing 5 people at Magdeburg's Christmas market, speeding a powerful car through the packed alleys between the stalls, causing terror and panic. The attack unfolded in the city's central square at around 7 o'clock on Friday evening. The car turned off a nearby road and onto a pedestrian crossing, entering the market through a gap in the concrete security perimeter that had been left open for emergency vehicles. It drove into the celebrating crowds, injuring more than 200 people, 40 of them seriously. Minutes later, the car left the market on the east side and joined the main road. But the suspect couldn't get through the traffic, and this video shows armed officers arresting him, telling him not to move from the ground. Taleb al-Abdul Mohsin lives in this quiet town, Bernburg, around 25 miles away from the site of the attack, and more detail is coming to light about his background and his views. He came to Germany from Saudi Arabia nearly 20 years ago and works at this clinic as a psychiatrist. Ulrika's relative is being treated here. She was shocked when she heard the link.
Yes, I was very shaken. It's horrified. It's terrible. It's make me sad. It's make my whole family is very sad, and everything I know is sad.
From his home on this peaceful street, Taleb al-Abdul Mohsin built an online presence which will be key to the police's investigation. In 2019, he spoke to a German newspaper about what he called his activism, telling them, "I'm history's most aggressive critic of Islam. Just ask any Arab if you don't believe me." Attention is now turning to safety and security, whether this market was protected enough and whether authorities had any warnings that Taleb al-Abdul Mohsin may have posed a threat. Germany is waiting for the answers. Anna Foster, BBC News.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're live with BBC News. Now, US President-elect Donald Trump says he will demand the return of the Panama Canal to US hands if fees for the waterway are not reduced. He made the threat at the Turning Point USA conference in Arizona, his first political rally since he won the presidential election in November.
You got to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question. I'm not going to stand for it. So to the officials of Panama, please be guided accordingly.
Well, the president of Panama has since responded to President-elect Trump's comments. Let's take a listen.
The canal is not under the direct or indirect control of China, the European community, the United States, or any other power. As a Panamanian, I strongly reject any statement that misrepresents this reality. Every single square meter of the Panama Canal and its adjacent areas belongs to Panama and will continue to belong to Panama. The sovereignty and independence of our country are non-negotiable.
Well, there's now only 28 days until Inauguration Day on January 20th, when Donald Trump officially makes his return to the White House as the 47th President of the United States of America. Countries around the world are watching and waiting to see what his second term brings, including those in the Pacific, where there is particular concern about the President-elect's view on climate change. During his last term in office, he pulled the US out of the 2015 Paris Agreement. But during his campaign, he promised to, quote, drill, baby, drill, the ramping up of oil and gas exploration in the US. And his pick for Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, who is head of an oil and gas fracking company, is a vocal climate change skeptic. Donald Trump's return to the White House comes as global temperatures continue to rise at an alarming rate. 2024 is set to become the hottest on record, and the first year that Earth has warmed 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, which world leaders and scientists hope to avoid surpassing under the Paris Agreement. Enele Sopoanga was formerly Prime Minister of the Pacific island of Tuvalu and was a vocal critic of Donald Trump's climate policy when he was last in office. I asked him how he feels about that policy now, with a second Trump presidency just weeks away.
It is certainly a worry for the small island countries in the Pacific and Caribbean, all over the world, certainly in Tuvalu, that collective efforts, the urgent actions to deal with climate change are being distorted, and certainly the view coming from the newly elected President of the United States is of great concern to the people of the Pacific Island countries, and certainly to my country, Tuvalu. Yeah, we are deeply concerned about this, and I certainly hope that the new administration in Washington would seriously reconsider their position. We are very grateful with the positive, progressive position taken by the Joe Biden's government, which shows that these things can be done if we work collectively as a global community to address this very, very serious global concern to everybody on planet Earth. So it is certainly my call, and I pray that the new government of the United States...
I do apologize for interrupting. I do apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to ask you if you could paint a picture for our audience of the kinds of things that Tuvalu in particular is facing when it comes to climate change, especially with this year and last year being so terrible for climate change events.
Yes, the heat is likewise in other parts of the world almost unbearable. But the more serious things are the sea level rise and the erosion on very, very vital lands of the island country Tuvalu, and certainly more frequent cyclones and king tides, inundation of land are really affecting and creating a lot of uncertainty amongst the people of Tuvalu.
Okay. How should policymakers like yourself deal with Trump and his attitudes towards climate change?
We keep on urging for the calls that were made by Secretary General of the United Nations that we are really falling backwards on our words, on our commitments under the Paris Agreement, that we would collectively work together in spirit of goodwill and cooperation to address this, because it may be Tuvalu first to suffer and feel the impact of this phenomenon, but everybody, the globe, the whole globe, everybody on planet are going to suffer and feel the impact, the negative impact of climate change. Everyone, and we are already seeing this happening in all parts of the world. Certainly in Tuvalu, there is a growing concern. We feel very concerned about the possible loss of our culture, the violation of human rights. It is certainly a great concern, and the impacts on the security and long-term survival of the communities in Tuvalu. So we hope that urgent actions being taken by particularly those who can make a difference, including, of course, the US, which is the highest polluter, greenhouse gas emitter into the atmosphere, to take actions as what we have seen under the Joe Biden's very progressive climate change policies.
France will observe a day of national mourning for Mayotte on Monday, its overseas territory that was devastated by Cyclone Chido, the worst in nearly a century. President Emmanuel Macron announced the day of mourning during his visit to the island last week. The devastation is such that the authorities fear the number of deaths could eventually reach hundreds, possibly thousands. Well, after sweeping Mayotte, Chido made its way to Mozambique. Officials there say 94 people have been killed when the cyclone tore through the country last week. It packed winds of 160 miles an hour that destroyed thousands of homes in the country's north. Chido then moved into Malawi, where it killed 11 people and injured about 30 others. Now, young people in South Korea have been signing up in record numbers to marriage matching agencies to meet their significant others. Rachel Lee reports from Seoul.
Fairy tale weddings are expected in South Korea, but they don't all begin with meet-cutes or dating apps. Some couples are embracing new ways to meet. These newlyweds are unpacking their new life and business together. Their story started when they met through a marriage matching agency.
I signed up because I wanted to meet someone who also wanted to get married. Lots of people don't want to these days.
그 당시 직업이 건설회사를 다니고 있어가지고.
Working in construction, there weren't that many chances to meet new people. It was time effective to have an expert help find a good partner.
The pandemic made it difficult to meet people in person and caused a resurgence in marriage matchmaking.
The industry has grown by 30 to 40%. Perceptions have changed. In the past, young people thought these agencies were for those who had failed to get married. Now, they're seen as a way to find someone who matches their specific needs.
But matchmaking isn't always successful, and not everyone agrees with this method of finding a partner.
Using a marriage matching agency isn't always viewed very positively. It can seem like people are being judged by their profiles and are getting married without love. It felt a bit embarrassing to tell friends and family that I signed up with an agency.
Despite the increased popularity of marriage matchmaking, South Korea has extremely low marriage and fertility rate. They've been falling steadily for the past decade. In fact, the fertility rate here is the lowest in the world. And this is a huge challenge for the government, who's committed to tackling this issue. They too are playing matchmaker. They're organizing speed dating events, and marriage is the theme. They say they're providing young singles with an opportunity to meet and mingle.
Young people today lack opportunities to meet new people. So I really appreciate that the city is providing a venue for this.
But critics say they should be tackling high living costs and supporting women returning to work after children instead. Meanwhile, the government says these events work, with 2 marriages and many more on the horizon. As young people search for love, they're also seeking stability and security, something the country needs too, as it battles its demographic crisis. Rachel Lee, BBC News, Seoul.
Before we go, let's have a quick look at these spectacular pictures from China. This is Harbin Ice and Snow World in the northeast of the country, which opened over the weekend. It's been built using 300,000 cubic meters of ice and snow, and we'll leave you with those pictures. Do stay with BBC News.